There's secrets in her show.
So I dampen my Maxine's mop in the odorless thinner to begin with. I come to the well where I've got a little bit of my blue and a little bit of my purple. The color that I'm going to mix is really called periwinkle blue. If you can see this color, it's really a transparent lavender blue. I'll start with right here in the temple area, and I'll blend it out using a cosmetic sponge that also is available in that kit. I only lay on 1 or 2 lines at a time. The proper proportion of odorless thinner to paint is probably 6 to 10 parts thinner to 1 part paint. Literally, it's just a wash. Now the color I'm using this time is, in this well, Flesh 08. That's the color that Genesis uses, and I use this as a beginning foundation skin tone for all my Caucasian babies. What I've started doing now is I take my Maxine's mop and my sponge, and I actually use the soaked brush, Pat.
Yeah, let's turn that towards the camera so when you do it, they can actually see how you do it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna take sort of 1 brush load, and I'm gonna apply it to my sponge. This time, your most successful motion with this sponge, we call it pouncing in the paint world. And I'm going to continue to work this paint mix, Pat, until it's really going to be a medium transparency, but it's going to be a red, but it's got the brown and the blue added to it, to cool it down a little bit and to take the edge off the red and make it more of a human color. I'm going to reload my brush again.
I'm going to turn this around so you can see this and the effect that it has by having 2 different flesh tones alternating on there with the action where the brush is going back and forth. She creates an uneven skin tone, which is exactly what you want because the human skin is not one solid color.
Right. But I'm just going to color the inside of my sponge again, and now I'm going to give the final touch to this foot and to the toes. Now typically I would go back over this with even just a little bit of a pink flesh tone, but it's not necessary. Sometimes we overdo this step, and I've gotten mail asking me how to fix an overblushed baby, and this is the stage to do it. You can make an overblushed baby work for you. Painting lips is as individual as the doll and the artist that does it, but in this particular case you can see that the degree of transparency is important here. I'm barely staining these lips. You can add shading to the nails and to the lips in subsequent coats, but you have to work in layers if you're going to do that. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I want you just to see. Barely I begin to move my hand across the brow ridge. And sometimes I don't even touch it, but I'm feathering on tiny little strokes of hair from the very, very tip. And there are both my eyebrows. You'll just draw the brush into the depth of each crease or wrinkle. And you can do a few at a time. You're going to use your sponge again. As you can see now, Pat, I'm using some shorter strokes this time.
But now you're doing it you're doing it intentionally.
That's right. So it's it all depends on where you're working. I use a combination of the sponge back and forth. Your tighter spots are easier to blend when you use your brush, and you can use a combination of brushing and pouncing, whatever it takes to blend.
her secrets in her shoulder bag.